Fears are growing that major UK universities will go bust, meaning proper bust, doors locked, staff sacked. The North's economy and property business is heavily exposed if things take a nasty turn. I'm David Thame, Analysis Editor at Place North. In today's Place podcast, we're exploring the risks of university bankruptcy and who in the property business is in danger. We'll also be looking at the big money heading into regional shopping centres and how politicians can screw up planning decisions. A higher education funding crisis has been brewing for years. The cause is a version of the government-created problem that also afflicts local councils. In short, government has cut the funding it contributes whilst preventing universities from raising more money from UK-based student fees. Remember, tuition fees were capped in 2017. In this rock meets hard place circumstance, trouble was only a matter of time. Universities have been trying to plug the gap with overseas students because there's no cap on the fees they can charge them, and it worked for a while, but COVID, among other things, meant a collapse in overseas student recruitment, and the numbers haven't recovered. Immigration rule changes won't help either. The result is spiralling deficits. About a third of universities are running up losses each year. Soon it'll mean bankruptcy. The insider talk is that imminent breach of debt covenants will be the trip hazard. Ministers have been warned to prepare for the worst. The property industry is up to its ears in university-related projects, from student housing through science and life science parks, laboratories, and massive mixed-use schemes like the £1.7 billion ID Manchester. Partnerships with universities are now ubiquitous in the property industry. Local council planning committees like Manchester's last week are dominated by university-related development applications. If universities start to tumble, the property industry has a problem. How many property people seriously grasped that universities could go bust? I wonder. But bust they certainly can go. Since 2019, educational insolvency has been possible, a procedure that involves the full panoply of company voluntary arrangements, administration, creditors' voluntary liquidation, fixed charge receivership, the lot. In the minds of policymakers, that's a good thing. Bad businesses should be allowed to fail, and it keeps the better ones focused. There's enormous doubt whether ministers would actually allow a bankruptcy, but even so, there's plenty of evidence they'd insist on big changes instead, and that might be almost as disruptive. There are three areas to watch. These are joint ventures to develop sites, the effect on local economic growth, and on the student housing sector. First, let's look at joint ventures. Under pressure to make money, universities have been enthusiastic partners in all kinds of property ventures. ID Manchester is the largest in our region, but the list is long. Will universities be forced to be more risk-averse or pull out of their more ambitious joint ventures? I've been speaking to university insiders who think they could. Interest rate rises haven't helped. The view from the private sector is not quite so gloomy. Adam White is Executive Director and Northern Public Sector Lead at CBRE. He's been telling me that universities are unlikely to be deterred from participating in the development of science and innovation campuses. After all, there's a well-documented shortage of lab space, and higher education funding woes won't change that. Schemes will survive, he says, because structures can be tailored to meet a university's specific project objectives, and that can range from capital-light schemes to corporate joint ventures where the university invests significant equity and takes direct development risk. CBRE expects to see more, not less, partnership opportunities come into the market in 24-25 as universities seek to leverage their real estate assets and their research expertise. The second risk is to local economic growth. The University of Central Lancashire is a pioneer of the celebrated Preston model, which has seen local institutions try to spend locally and mindfully to improve the city's economic prospects. But could the model work in reverse, meaning university financial woes have unhappy spin-offs for host cities? Yes, it could, says Professor Philip Wyman, Director of the Lancashire Centre for Business and Enterprise, and one of those studying the Preston model's effects. The good news is that if local institutions have picked up good spending habits, the useful economic effects can survive a cut in public spending, says Professor Wyman. But even so, it's not ideal. The third area of interest is student housing. Running student accommodation is costly and time-consuming for universities. A few have outsourced, and maybe more will do so now given their own financial peril. They should, according to Richard Ward, head of research at student beds platform StuRents. He says that universities should be considering working more closely with developers to ensure they can continue to attract students. The financial headaches now afflicting universities will get worse before they get better. The government will have to decide how far it's prepared to let things go, whether to allow bankruptcy and closures, and if so, how many. For the property business and for local economies, it means yet another uncertainty and more risks to growth and prosperity. But it won't be an extinction event. Joint ventures that make sense will still make sense, and new opportunities to outsource in areas like student housing might arise. It all depends what politicians want. Now it's time for your weekly rundown of what's going up and what's heading the other way in the Place North elevator. Logistics, supply, haulage, distribution is one of the handful of economic sectors showing growth. Unfortunately, a special form of planning blight is afflicting the sector in our region. That blight is slow and rudderless decision-making. At least a firm no represents certainty, everyone can move on, investment can go elsewhere, but a lingering silence and lots of weak political vacillation is no use to anyone. The latest victim is Langtree and its partner Panattoni, who've been waiting 2 years now for a decision on a 3.1 million square foot proposal for an M6 site south of Warrington. The wait is likely to go on. This isn't the first time huge and economically significant warehousing schemes have been stymied by delays. Between 2019 and 2022, 5 Northwest logistics schemes, a total of 6.8 million square feet, hung in the balance. Developers said it put an eye-watering £1.4 billion worth of economic benefits on hold. The Langtree Panattoni site has a tortured history. The government decided not to call in the application in March 2022, then in November 2022 changed its mind and said it would, whilst Warrington Council first agreed the land could be removed from Greenbelt, then changed its mind and now says it's neither in favour nor against. The planning inspectorate have been left holding the baby, and they say they'll wait another 6 months whilst challenges to the council's strategic plan are worked through. All too often the planning system is said by politicians to be the cause of delays and the economic sclerosis that results. Maybe sometimes it is, but in this instance it's politicians' wibbly-wobbly approach to decision-making that's screwing up the prospect of jobs and investment. Our second elevator contains a great big shopping centre. This week brought word that Mike Ashley is circling over Sheffield's Meadowhall Centre, whilst Land Securities appears to be firming up its intentions to buy a majority stake in Liverpool One. Big northern shopping centres are now firmly in the buy category. Mike Ashley's Frasers is said to be finalising a £750 million bid for Meadowhall in a deal with British Land and their partners Norgesbank Investment Management. The yield would be around 7%. Over in Liverpool, summer speculation that the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority planned to offload its 69% stake to Land Securities has hardened into something like certainty. Land Securities appear to be edging closer to a deal at £350 million, which would mean a yield of about 8%. Of course, there's been a massive destruction of value in shopping centres. In 2020, when Norgate bought into Meadowhall, the mighty Sheffield Mall was valued at £1.5 billion, so it's down by about half since the peak. That's painful for vendors, but water off a duck's back for buyers. What they notice is that the shopping centre market has hit the bottom, and the payback for them looks very tempting. Prime regional shopping centre yields are very nearly double what they are in the hottest rival sector, industrial, where buyers' money could only make 4 or 5%. Better still, there are early signs that shopping centres are making actual positive returns on investment, which gives lenders confidence, and thus the purchasing merry-go-round begins to spin. It's not entirely rosy because shopping centre rents are still falling overall, even if the big centres are doing better. But with nobody building any more shopping centres and unlikely to start in the immediate future, buying into the sector feels like a solid one-way bet. So that's it for this week. We've seen how university collapse could mean big trouble or some opportunities for the property market. We've travelled in the placed elevator to see serious money return to the regional shopping centre business, and we've seen how difficult it is for politicians to make up their minds on planning. For more about the built environment in the North, visit placenorth.co.uk. I'm David Thame, and thank you for listening.